the last time you squatted that 195?
Over a year ago.
Oh yeah, before quarantine?
Yeah, I've squatted to 185 for a few reps a few months ago.
So you did 185 for reps. That means you're over 200 if you can do it for reps.
I was scared.
Okay. All right. Well, we're gonna work on that. Do you ever wear a belt?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, and I brought the belt that I wear.
Show me your belt. Now, what we're going to be doing is working on building your internal belt over the next few weeks, and that's going to make a humongous difference. Huge difference. So this is basically just going to remind you to push into it, basically. It's not really going to support you much. Yeah, and this isn't a bad thing. Now, it's not going to help you lift more weight, but it's going to remind you to push into it. So going forward, just a little something for you. When you're wearing this, remember, you can just test just the abdominal brace. Now, minor abdominal brace, a little bit more. Just you tune it up depending on, you know, if you're doing some lunges, you're not going to need to be locked down like this. But if you're doing 250, you will need to be locked down like that. Okay. So what I want you to do now, a little bit heavier weight. I want you to work on one perfect rep. This time, I want your stance out a hair wider than last time. Okay, and I want you to really work on rooting into the floor and spreading the floor. Spreading that floor, okay? One perfect rep. Doing good. Good day so far. Good. Elbows down, remember, locking in. Good. Good. 1, 2. There we go, sucking some air. Hip hinge. And drive. Good. Back in. That looked good.
Did it?
It looked really good. How did it feel?
It felt good. Again, I feel like I'm so out of balance with it being with my torso being so much more vertical than I'm used to. So
How much leverage have you gained, do you think, just by those two changes?
I've gained a lot of leverage, I think.
But you're not used to it, so it's going to take you a little bit of time to get used to it. But think of how much less bar travel you need if you're here versus here. And that's what it's about. Now, if you're trying to move more weight, that's what you got to do. You got to make sure you're loading the posterior more. That's the thing. You got great hamstrings and great hips. So if you're not loading the posterior, you're not using your glutes and your hamstrings. You're only using quads. Well, you're still using them, but they're not dominant. So by getting the hip hinge and sitting back, you're loading your entire posterior chain. Okay? And it's going to take you a little bit of time to feel good with being more upright, because what's comfortable right now is the way you've been doing it. So I wouldn't expect it to always feel better, but we're going to keep adding a little bit more weight. But to me, you looked good on that rep, and it was nice and direct. Now, when you lean over a lot, you got some bar travel. It goes forward, then it comes back up. So the biggest thing that I saw on that one, I want you to get your elbows down a little bit more and just maintain it, because they want to start chicken winging out a little bit like that. Now, you can always take your grip a little bit wider than that. So instead of being all the way in like this, you can always do that, and then it'll help you pull your lats down a little bit more potentially, okay? But as you bolster your core over the coming weeks, you're gonna notice that these weights are gonna feel so much more comfortable on your back. And then we have some exercises that will help you with your walkout some. Do you ever do carries?
Occasionally.
What kind? Suitcase, yeah, those are good. So you start doing those a couple times a week, it's really gonna bolster your lateral core like a lot. Now, I get you don't wanna make your waist bigger, doing a lot of like stuff that's gonna thicken you, so that the weighted stuff like suitcase carries, maybe you only do those once a week, but the side planks and stuff aren't gonna bulk your obliques up much. But there is a chance if you're really pushing the squat up that you might get a little bit thicker in the midsection, but yeah, it's a well, there's no free passes. There's always going to be something that's going to suffer when you push towards something, you know, whether it be work, your nutrition, you know, whatever it may be. When you have a goal in mind like that, some other things might kind of not be as good as you'd hope. So let's do another single with this. Let's approach it just the same, but I'm going to put some chalk on your back. Now, I know you can't do this at Bailey's, but the goal is to put chalk right where the bar goes so it isn't going to want to roll down your back a little bit, okay? This is the way we chalk the back. Now, ideally, she'd have on a full t-shirt so we can get as much surface of chalk on her as possible. But we're just gonna go across here and make sure we have it on the racer back here and across her shoulders. This just gives the bar a little bit more of a shelf. What we've been doing with Michaela is we're building her lifter's wedge. We're pulling her lats down. We're teaching her how to build her core nice and rigid and locked in. And the only thing she's engaging and moving is her hip. So we want as little torso movement as possible. And that's how you gain the most poundage on your squat. Less range of motion. Now, if you're trying to build glutes, hamstring, quads, that's a totally different game. You're not trying to shorten the range of motion. You're trying to lengthen it. So this is going to be a little bit different. So this time I want you to do one perfect rep. You're going to do the same stance as last time, and I want you to drive those heels to the floor and really grip that floor, okay? Doing good. Come on. Nice and tight, elbows down. Good. 1, 2, a little bit wider. There you go. Suck in your air, stiffen up. Arch, 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 arch. Good. Back in. 1, 2, and in. Good. How'd that feel?
It felt like I did have a lot more spring power.
It did?
Yeah.
Out of the bottom?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And
Yeah.
go ahead.
It felt, once again, it's like so different from how I squat that it almost seems heavier than I'm used to, but I also didn't seem to have trouble getting it up.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, it's going to be an adjustment because it is different, you know, because you're using less back.
Yeah.
You know, you're locking in the torso a little bit more. So we'll take this again in a second. Most of the time when I'm teaching seminars and such, I don't have people go past 50%. Just because the changes are a lot on some people, and you'll be disappointed if we threw like 200 pounds on you now. You'll be like, this is so heavy, but you've got to get used to the form and make it natural. Because right now, you're having to think about 4 or 5 different things that I just taught you. Yeah. So it's a bit overwhelming. So that's why we're not worried about going heavy today. We're just ingraining the form. Then you'll have the tools to work on and sharpen over the coming weeks. Yeah. Unless you just abandon it and start wanting to do your own thing again, you know. I have people do that sometimes too. I want you to get up a little bit more. Treat this as if it's more challenging, but when you hit that sticking point, we're going to see your sticking point. It's not going to be in the hole. It's going to be the quads. Yeah. So then we can start working on building your quads. But as you drive out of the hole, don't let it shock you. Keep driving through all the way to the top, okay? Same thing. Nice and tight. Drive all the way through it. Nice and tight. Stiff. Good, good. Nice and stiff. Good. And drive. Yes, there it is. Back in. That is much better. What was different there? You looked like you loaded up your butt and then drove all the way through with your hand. That's why it's like, so in powerlifting, we wear suits and gear. Careful. We wear suits and we wear wraps. We wear different suits and stuff. Some people do it raw, but you load up the posterior chain. So my hips are so tight, it's almost like I have a built-in suit. Yeah. Your hips are loose, but the more you can tighten them up and stiffen up everything, the more power you're gonna have. Yeah. I mean, when the people out there watch the before and after of the squat there, it's gonna be a stark difference, okay? So let's add a little bit of weight. Now that you fired that through the hole, that was it. You weren't driving through, you coasted. You do what we call coasting whenever you knew you had to lift and it's like, boom, and then you just kind of just ease through it. The problem with that is when the weight's at 200 plus pounds, it's going to catch up with you. Once the stretch reflex and momentum dies out, you're going to have to grind it with your weakest part, and that's your quads. Yeah. It's my weakest part too, so I'm familiar with that. So what we're looking at now is you can still do your glute stuff and your hamstring stuff, but we're going to work on doing more quad stuff like in your programming, but because we're seeing that now with what we've went through and just the, you know, just watching you squat and everything, the quad focus will be good. All right, so we're going up a little bit more now. You're not wearing your belt. You're in a unique, different environment that you're used to squatting. So sometimes it'll feel heavier, sometimes it'll feel lighter. But I just want you to focus on this lift. The last one was perfect, so I want you to be even stiffer now. I want you to turn up the stiffness a little bit more. I want you to suck in a little bit of air when you're underneath the bar. You're here. You're underneath. You're locking in. I just want a little more stiffness, and then when you're here and you're walking out, you're nice and locked in, stiff, and then you loaded up your hips perfectly on that last one. I knew it was going to be a good one, but you can load the hips up even more when you're really externally rotating and locking in. And make sure it's coming from your glute and not just going to the outside of your foot. Make sure the foot is locked in and really torqued. All right? So that core that we're building, this core of iron here, it's the meeting ground of the of the locked in upper body and the locked in lower body. Elbows down. Good. 1, 2. Suck in your air. And drive. Good. Back in. Very good. Yeah, you're good. You're so mobile that you're going to think that, like on some of the squats I've seen you do, you're like literally that far below parallel. You cut it down, and next thing you know, like your depth is in half. Like before you even know it, you're like, up. So if you're trying to be an Olympic lifter, those squats are great. But to build great quads, to build great glutes and hamstrings, you're actually taking your musculature out of it by bouncing in the bottom. You're going so low that you're not even working your quads at all that low. Right. I mean, to drive up you are, but the extra range of motion, except for you, a lot of the time comes out of people's back, and it shears the crap out of their knees too. So you're doing good. Let's work on just shaving the depth off from where that was, but that was perfect. And it's gonna feel like you're a high, I've been called a high squatter for 22 years, and I always get my squats passed. So I wouldn't focus on so much on trying to bury these squats, but get good form and don't worry about any more than that. And then when you try to, if you want to go back to Olympic lifting, or if you want to do some snatching or cleaning, then you need to forget the powerlifting squat for a little while and work the Olympic squat, but the goals are completely different. Right. This squat's going to build the body more so than the Olympic lifting. The Olympic lifting is more about speed, speed and quickness and form. Powerlifting is about just raw power and moving weight. So that's why typically girls gravitate towards powerlifting, because they can build their shoulders up, they can build their back, they can build their hips and their legs, and and they can have fun doing it. So you can eat more when you're training heavy too. That's another good thing, So that looked really good. I want to keep going up. So let's just rest for a minute. And your mental game got a little bit better there. What did you do mentally to prepare for that last one? Because we added 20 pounds and it looked just as easy. So what did you do differently?
I don't know if I did.
Okay. Well, that's helpful.
I think that I'm just deferring to the expert on whether or not I can do it. I'm just assuming.
Okay. Good. Well, you got to give yourself some credit because you locked in and it looked really good. So whatever it is you did mentally to prepare for that one, I want you to do the same exact thing.
I'm not counting what's on the bar.
Don't count on the bar. Go get another thing of water again. A little sip. Thank you so much for watching today. Please subscribe, like, and share if you enjoyed this video, and have a wonderful day.